The sun rose over the floating cities of Zyphora, painting the sky with shades of gold and violet. The clouds swirled lazily around towers that hovered above forests glowing with bioluminescent plants. From the surface, it looked like magic, but the truth was science far beyond human understanding, or so the Zyphorans believed. The air hummed with energy, and the wind carried a faint musical tone that came from the city's power generators. This was a world of beauty and danger, and it had waited centuries for something extraordinary to arrive. That morning, the humans arrived. Their ships were small, simple, and unremarkable compared to the grand, floating vessels of Zyphora, but their presence drew eyes immediately. People crowded the terraces of the floating cities, curious and cautious. Humans were rare in this sector, and most aliens considered them fragile, incapable of surviving long in environments like Zyphora. Yet among the newcomers, one human stood out. He was tall and solidly built, with calm eyes that seemed to measure everything around him. His presence carried a quiet confidence, a strength that did not demand attention but could not be ignored. Captain Cale Rivers stepped from his ship, boots touching the transparent landing pads of the royal city. The air smelled different here, sweet and sharp at the same time, and it made him alert. He scanned the city with the precision of someone trained to see what others could not. Every hovercraft, every flying platform, every energy conduit was catalogued in his mind. To anyone watching, he seemed calm and composed, but inside, Cale's senses were alive, reading everything. At the royal palace, Princess Liara prepared for the welcoming ceremony. She was young, her hair silver blue and her skin glowing faintly in the morning light, a natural trait of her people. Her eyes, a deep violet, were curious and alert. She had grown up surrounded by the wonders of Zyphora, but humans fascinated her in a way she could not explain. They were strange, small in comparison to her people, yet there was something in their eyes that spoke of fire and determination, something she had never seen in her own kind. The ceremony began with a fanfare of sound and light, alien instruments playing harmonies that resonated through the city. Cale remained silent, standing apart from the crowd, observing everything with measured detachment. When Liara entered on her hovercraft, she noticed him immediately. He looked at her, and their eyes met. She felt a strange pull, a mix of curiosity and caution. She had seen many warriors, even humans, but none had moved with such quiet control and poise. There was a power in him that was hidden beneath calm eyes, a power that promised both protection and danger. The ceremony continued, but Liara's attention remained on the human warrior. She watched him move among the crowd, his gestures careful but confident, always aware of those around him. When the dignitaries approached, he greeted them politely, his tone respectful yet firm. He answered questions with clear, precise words, never faltering, and never revealing more than necessary. Liara found herself drawn to him, intrigued by the mystery he carried like a second skin. After the ceremony, the princess decided to explore the floating gardens above the city. The gardens were famous for their rare plants, each glowing in soft colors and releasing fragrances that could calm or excite the mind. Liara loved walking among them, feeling the wind on her face and the life of the plants around her. But today, curiosity led her to seek the human warrior she had been watching. She found Cale near the edge of a platform, studying the energy flows of the city. He did not notice her at first, his attention focused on something far more subtle than the beauty surrounding him. Liara approached quietly, not wanting to startle him. "Captain Cale Rivers," she said softly. "Are you enjoying our city?" He turned slowly, eyes meeting hers. "It is impressive," he replied. His voice was calm, controlled, but there was a warmth in it that surprised her. "But impressive things are only valuable if they can be protected." Liara frowned slightly. "Protected? Do you think we cannot protect our city?" He studied her carefully, tilting his head. "Perhaps, but every world has threats, some seen, some unseen. It is wise to be prepared." Liara felt a shiver run through her. There was truth in his words, yet the way he said them was unsettling. She realized that humans, though small and seemingly fragile, had an understanding of danger that her people sometimes ignored. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden alarm. A spark of panic ran through the gardens as Liara's hovercraft began to malfunction. The craft shuddered violently, spinning toward the edge of the platform. Liara's heart raced as she tried to regain control, but the energy systems were failing too quickly. Kale acted before she could even scream. He leapt into the air, moving faster than her eyes could follow. His hands caught the edge of the hovercraft, steadying it as if it were weightless. Liara stared at him in shock. The human had moved within human speed and strength, saving her from certain death. "You're safe," Kale said, his voice calm, almost casual as he placed the hovercraft back on a stable course. Liara's knees nearly gave out. She had seen warriors, even humans, perform incredible feats, but this was something else entirely. "How?" she whispered, unable to finish the question. Kale shrugged slightly. "Instinct," he said. There was no boast in his tone, only the quiet certainty of someone used to being the last line of defense. From that moment, Liara became captivated. She found herself seeking his company at every opportunity, watching him move, listening to his words, and studying the way he interacted with the world. She began to see the humans in a new light, not fragile creatures, but beings of resilience and determination. There was something raw and unstoppable in their nature, and Kale embodied it fully. But Kale had his own thoughts. While he cared for the princess's safety, his mind was never far from the danger looming on the horizon. He had detected signals, faint and irregular, from a fleet approaching Zyphora. These were not ordinary visitors. They were the remnants of an empire long thought destroyed, and their purpose was clear: conquest. Kale's human enhancements allowed him to detect these threats long before the Zyphorans could, and he knew that when the attack came, it would be swift and merciless. Yet he did not reveal this to Liara. How could he? She saw him as a protector, not a weapon. She did not know that Kale was more than a soldier, more than a warrior. He was engineered, a living weapon created by humans centuries ago to combat alien civilizations. His speed, strength, and tactical genius were not natural. They were designed, programmed into him for one purpose: to survive and destroy enemies of humanity. Even as he walked among the citizens, smiling politely and conversing with the royal council, Kale's mind worked in parallel. Every movement, every conversation, every glance was analyzed for threats. He mapped escape routes, noted the city's vulnerabilities, and prepared contingencies in case the approaching fleet arrived sooner than expected. Meanwhile, Liara continued to be drawn to him. She admired his quiet strength, his ability to stay calm under pressure, and his sharp intelligence. She began to see him not as a stranger, but as someone who understood courage in a way her people had never taught. To her, he was both mystery and marvel, a being of grace and power who made her feel alive in ways the safety of her palace never could. Their bond grew in small, stolen moments. They walked together through the forests, sharing stories and laughter. Liara taught him about Zyphora's culture, its history, and the delicate balance of life in the floating cities. Kale, in turn, taught her basic combat techniques under the guise of self-defense. He never revealed the full extent of his abilities, never let her see the weapon he truly was. One evening, as they watched the twin moons rise over the horizon, Liara asked, "Do you ever feel different, like you do not belong anywhere?" Kale did not answer immediately. He looked at her, sensing the genuine curiosity and vulnerability in her voice. "Sometimes," he said finally, "but different is not always bad. It can be a strength." Liara nodded thoughtfully. She did not know the full truth, but she sensed there was more to him than he let on. She felt safe with him, and yet there was an edge, a tension in his presence that made her heart race. As night fell, the city's lights shimmered across the floating platforms, casting reflections on the glowing forests below. Kale stood at the edge of the palace, scanning the horizon. The signals he had detected earlier were growing stronger. The enemy fleet was coming, and when it arrived, no one on Zyphora would be ready for the force it carried. Kale knew that the coming days would test everything he had been trained for, and more. He would have to reveal parts of himself he had hidden for centuries, parts of his nature that even he sometimes struggled to control. And yet, as he looked at the sleeping city and the princess he had saved, he felt a resolve forming. No matter what came, he would protect this world. Not because he was programmed to, but because he chose to. And in that choice, Kale found something that no weapon could ever have: humanity. Days passed on Zyphora with a strange mix of calm and unease. The human fleet remained docked on the planet's edge, their small ships contrasting with the floating city's grandeur. Citizens went about their routines, yet whispers of unease ran through the crowds. Most had never encountered humans closely before, and their power and strange ways unsettled the people. Yet for Princess Liara, Every day with Kale brought fascination and a growing sense of trust. Kale moved through the floating gardens each morning, observing, noting, and preparing. He had memorized every flight path of the hovercrafts, every energy conduit, and every potential weak point in the city. While the Zyphorans considered him a quiet protector, Kale's mind worked like a machine. Every action of every alien, every shift in the wind, every subtle change in the hum of the city's energy grids was recorded and analyzed. He was always aware, always calculating. Liara, meanwhile, tried to understand him. She watched the way he moved, his eyes constantly scanning, his posture never fully relaxed. Unlike her people who often relied on beauty or tradition, Kale relied on observation and instinct. It fascinated her. She wanted to know him not as a soldier, not as a human, but as someone who could be more. "Kale," she said one morning as they walked along a floating walkway, "do you ever sleep without thinking about danger?" Kale glanced at her, considering the question. "Sleep is for rest," he replied. "Thinking about danger is preparation. Humans survive by preparing." Liara frowned. "But don't you ever just live?" He looked out over the glowing forests below. "Sometimes, but living is easier when you are ready for anything." Liara laughed softly. She found his calm, matter-of-fact attitude strange, yet comforting. There was a strength in him that did not need to be shouted or displayed. It was quiet, steady, and undeniable. Their mornings were often filled with exploration. Liara showed Kale the hidden paths of the city, secret gardens where rare flowers glowed in colors that seemed impossible. Kale listened, observed, and sometimes smiled faintly, but he never let himself become distracted for long. There were patterns in the air, signs of danger he could not ignore. One afternoon, they ventured into the forests below the floating platforms. The plants here were taller, thicker, and strange in ways that defied physics. Bioluminescent vines wrapped around crystal-like trees, and strange insects glided in the air, leaving trails of glowing dust. Liara loved this place, calling it the heartbeat of Zyphora. Kale followed quietly, scanning every movement, noting every sound. He paused frequently, listening to signals only he could detect. Hidden in the forest, alien scouts moved silently, observing the human presence on Zyphora. Kale detected them immediately, noting their positions, their weapons, and their patterns. "Why do you keep stopping?" Liara asked, noticing his sudden pauses. Kale turned slightly. "Nothing, just enjoying the forest." Liara's eyes narrowed. She sensed the truth hiding behind his calm. "Kale," she said softly, "I can tell when you are hiding something. Please trust me." Kale looked at her, considering. Trust was not a weakness for humans, but it was rare. He had trained for centuries to rely on himself, to rely on instinct rather than sentiment. And yet here was Liara asking for honesty. He nodded slightly. "There are scouts," he admitted. "Enemies of this planet. They are hiding in the forest, observing us." Liara's eyes widened. "Enemies, but we are at peace." Kale's expression was unreadable. "Peace is fragile. It is the calm before the storm." "I have been trained to detect threats before they arrive. That is what I do." Liara felt a mix of fear and awe. "And you are human. How can you see them?" Kale's gaze turned serious. "Humans are not as fragile as most think. We survive because we adapt. And I am more than most humans." Liara noticed the pause, the way he carefully chose his words. "More than a human?" she whispered. Kale did not answer directly. Instead, he took her hand and led her away from the hidden scouts, ensuring no harm came to her. His movements were precise, silent, and untraceable. He carried her over obstacles effortlessly, his strength hidden beneath casual gestures. By the time they reached the edge of the forest, the scouts had vanished. Kale set her down gently, and she looked up at him, realizing fully that this man was unlike anyone she had ever met. "You are extraordinary," she said softly, "more than I could have imagined." Kale said nothing, only watching the horizon. He felt the weight of what was coming. The enemy fleet was approaching, and soon his ability to hide who he truly was would no longer matter. Every skill, every enhancement, every instinct he had honed over centuries would be tested. That evening, the princess invited Kale to dine with her in the palace. The royal table floated above a pond of glowing water, and exotic fruits shimmered under soft light. Liara wanted to share her world with him, to show him beauty beyond combat, beyond duty. "Tell me about your people," she said. "Humans. You seem different from us in ways I cannot explain." Kale leaned back slightly, considering. Humans are survivors. We endure hardships that others cannot. We build, destroy, and rebuild. We fight for what we love. That is our strength." Liara smiled faintly. "And what do you love, Kale?" He paused, caught off guard. Most humans would answer instinctively, but he was not an ordinary human. He had been engineered, programmed to survive and destroy. Emotions were secondary, yet looking at her, he felt something entirely new. "I value this world," he said finally, "and I value those I protect." Liara reached across the table, touching his hand. "Then perhaps for once you are human in every way that matters." Kale felt a spark of warmth, something unfamiliar and unsettling. He was a weapon designed for destruction, yet her trust awakened a part of him no machine could replicate. Love, choice, and loyalty, the very qualities his creators had tried to control, were his own now. Days later, Kale's vigilance uncovered another hidden threat. The alien scouts had returned, more aggressive this time. They were small, agile, and equipped with cloaking devices that made them almost invisible. Kale intercepted them in secret, disabling their equipment with precise strikes and leaving no trace behind. Liara noticed his growing restlessness. "You are not telling me everything, are you?" she asked one night as they walked through the gardens. Kale shook his head slightly. "Not yet. Some truths are dangerous. You must be protected from them until the time is right." Liara's heart ached with both frustration and concern. She wanted to trust him completely, yet she could sense the weight he carried. "I want to trust you, Kale, but you must let me in." Kale stopped, looking at her intently. "Trust is a choice," he said. "I choose to protect you, but some parts of me, even I cannot control fully. When the danger comes, you may see things you are not ready for." Liara studied him, noting the tension in his posture, the faint glow in his eyes when he focused on distant signals. She sensed his power, and despite fear, she admired it. She felt safe and exhilarated at the same time. The following day, a small explosion rocked the royal dockyard. Sparks flew into the air as small alien drones attempted to breach the city's defenses. Citizens panicked, fleeing from the glowing fires, while the city's security forces scrambled. Kale reacted immediately, moving with speed no Xyphoran could match. He dismantled the drones silently, crushing circuits and disabling engines with precise strikes. Liara watched from the palace balcony, her heart pounding. The man she had admired and loved was no longer simply a warrior. He was something more, something inhuman. She saw his strength, his instincts, and his decisiveness, and for the first time, fear mingled with awe. After the threat was neutralized, Kale returned to her side. "They are scouts," he explained quietly. "This is only the beginning. A larger fleet is on the way. Xyphora is a target because it is rich, and humans like me are rare here." Liara's hands trembled slightly. "Humans like you? What does that mean?" Kale's gaze softened. "I am not like ordinary humans. I was created to be strong, fast, and smart beyond normal limits. My creators designed me as a weapon. But despite that, I choose my own path. I choose to protect you in this world." Liara felt a mixture of shock and admiration. A weapon. And yet, the human standing before her was filled with courage, care, and a sense of morality no machine could replicate. She realized that even as a weapon, Kale's humanity, his choice to protect rather than destroy, was what made him truly remarkable. That night, as the twin moons rose again over the floating cities, Liara and Kale stood together on a terrace, watching the glowing forests below. The threat was real, the enemy was coming, and yet for a moment there was peace. Liara reached for Kale's hand, and he allowed it, feeling an unfamiliar warmth in the simple human gesture. Kale knew the coming days would test everything he had been trained for. His abilities, his instincts, and his morality would all be challenged. And yet, in that quiet moment, he also realized something important. A weapon could choose its own path. And for the first time, he chose not just to survive or fight, but to love and protect. The first waves of the enemy fleet were still days away, but Kale was ready. Every moment of calm was preparation for the storm. And Liara, unaware of the full truth of the man beside her, felt a bond growing stronger than fear, stronger than mystery. Together they would face whatever came. Together they would define the fate of Xyphora. And in that growing bond, something extraordinary began. A combination of trust, courage, and human ingenuity that no alien force could anticipate. The skies over Xyphora darkened as the first signs of the enemy fleet approached. What had begun as a distant signal now grew into massive silhouettes, moving through the upper atmosphere with silent menace. The fleet was vast, alien ships unlike anything the Xiforans had seen, glinting with a strange energy that made even the floating cities seem fragile. Citizens gazed upward, fear and awe mingling in their expressions. The royalty had sounded alarms, and every hovercraft was ordered into defensive positions. Yet, despite the chaos, Kale remained calm. His eyes scanned the skies, measuring distance, speed, and attack patterns. Princess Liara stood beside him on the palace terrace, clutching the railing as the shadows of the incoming ship stretched across the glowing forests below. "They're huge," she whispered, almost to herself. "How can we fight them?" Kale's gaze softened slightly as he looked at her. "We will not fight alone. You have your people, your city, and your technology. I have abilities that few can match. Together we can defend Xiphora." Liara studied him closely. She had sensed his power growing, but now it was undeniable. There was something in his stance, the calm calculation in his eyes, the way he seemed to anticipate every movement in the sky that set him apart from everyone else. She realized with both fear and awe that he was more than human. And yet, even as the truth of his nature threatened to overwhelm her, she felt a surge of trust and determination. If Kale could face this threat, so could she. Kale activated a small device on his wrist, barely visible, sending a pulse into the city's energy grid. He was analyzing weaknesses, rerouting power to defensive systems, and preparing countermeasures. No one else could understand the complexity of what he was doing, and the Xiphoran engineers simply watched in amazement as systems they had considered advanced suddenly optimized themselves. The first wave of attack came in silence. Alien drones descended into the city like shadows, their shapes shifting and glowing with energy that burned through air and metal. Citizens screamed as the drones began targeting hovercraft, buildings, and energy nodes. The city's defense systems activated, firing pulses of light and energy, but the drones adapted quickly. Kale moved through the chaos like a force of nature. He leapt from platform to platform with impossible speed, disarming drones, disabling engines, and protecting civilians. His movements were precise, almost elegant, but deadly. Each action calculated, each strike effective, leaving no trace of error. He moved faster than the eye could follow, and yet he never lost focus on the princess, ensuring her safety above all else. Liara followed from a distance, guiding civilian hovercrafts to safety and assisting guards where she could. She saw Kale in action, and for the first time fully understood the scale of his abilities. He was no longer merely a protector. He was a force that could change the tide of battle with a single decision. She felt fear, yes, but also admiration. He was extraordinary in ways that defied belief, and his loyalty and courage were absolute. As the battle intensified, one of the drones managed to break through Kale's defenses and headed straight toward a floating platform where dozens of civilians had gathered. Kale reacted instantly, leaping into the path of the drone. With a single motion, he grabbed it, crushed its core, and sent it flying into the air where it exploded harmlessly. Liara gasped, realizing that no ordinary human could have done what she had just witnessed. The enemy commander, a massive alien ship at the head of the fleet, began targeting the city directly. Energy beams struck the floating towers, causing parts of the city to shudder and fall. Kale assessed the situation in an instant. The commander's ship was powerful, but its patterns were predictable to someone with his abilities. He formulated a plan quickly, coordinating with the city's defenses and using his own movements to distract and dismantle the enemy's attack. Liara watched him move closer to the battle zone, worry tightening in her chest. "Kale, you can't face them alone," she called out, her voice lost in the roar of energy and destruction. Kale turned briefly, his expression calm. "I'm not alone. You're here and your people are fighting too. That is enough." As he engaged the enemy directly, his true nature was revealed. His body moved faster than any drone could respond. His strength allowed him to crush alien weapons effortlessly, and his reflexes enabled him to dodge beams that could pierce steel. His tactical mind calculated every possible outcome in seconds, ensuring the maximum protection for the city and its inhabitants. Liara saw the faint glow that surrounded him during his battle, a sign of the energy coursing through him. It was terrifying and mesmerizing at the same time. She realized fully that he was not just a human, he was a weapon designed for war. And yet he fought not for destruction, but for life. Every strike he made, every move he executed was aimed at protecting others. The battle continued for hours. Alien drones descended in waves, each more aggressive than the last. Kale moved tirelessly, intercepting threats, guiding civilians, and coordinating defenses. Liara assisted where she could, but she knew she could not match his abilities. Still, she felt pride in her people as they followed her lead, helping to fortify the city and evacuate the wounded. Finally, the alien commander deployed a massive energy cannon aimed directly at the palace. The platform shook violently as energy beams struck nearby buildings. Kale assessed the threat instantly. The cannon's energy signature was unlike anything he had faced before, but he adapted quickly, calculating the exact moment and angle to strike. He leapt into the air, moving faster than light seemed to allow. Reaching the cannon, he struck it at its core, disabling it before it could fire. The explosion of energy sent him flying across the sky, but he landed safely on a platform, barely a scratch on him. Liara ran to his side, her heart racing. You are incredible," she whispered, almost in disbelief. Kale nodded, catching his breath. "It is not power alone that wins battles," he said. "It is knowledge, preparation, and the courage to act. Strength is nothing without purpose." Liara's gaze softened. "And your purpose is to protect us?" "Yes," he replied simply, "and I choose to do so every time." But the battle was not over. The alien fleet still loomed in the sky and the commander's forces were regrouping. Kale knew this was only the beginning. He turned to Liara, his expression serious. "There is something you must know," he said quietly. "I am not what I appear to be. I am a weapon, created for war, designed to survive and destroy enemies." Liara froze, her hand gripping his arm. "A weapon?" she repeated, disbelief mixing with fear. Kale nodded. "Yes, but despite my design, I have choice. I choose to protect, to fight for those I care about, to act with humanity. That is what makes me who I am." Liara studied him, seeing the truth in his eyes. She saw the quiet strength, the unwavering courage, and the unmistakable care for her and her people. She realized that his humanity was not defined by his origin, but by his actions, by his choices. "Then you are more than a weapon," she said softly. "You are human in every way that matters." Kale allowed himself a faint smile, a rare expression for someone usually controlled and precise. "Perhaps," he said, "but the world will see me as a weapon first. That is unavoidable." Together they faced the enemy, the bond between them strengthening with every challenge. Kale's abilities were unmatched, but it was his heart, his choice to protect, to care, to act with empathy, that made the true difference. He moved like a force of nature, but every move was guided by humanity, by the desire to protect life rather than destroy it. The Xiforan citizens, inspired by Kale's courage and Liara's leadership, began to fight back with renewed determination. Engineers improvised defenses, pilots used clever tactics, and civilians assisted in ways small and large. The city, once vulnerable, became a fortress of ingenuity, courage, and unity. Kale guided them, teaching and protecting, but also showing that even ordinary beings could make extraordinary differences. By the end of the battle, the alien commander realized that brute force alone would not win. Kale's speed, strength, and intelligence were unparalleled, and the Xiforans' resilience and ingenuity made them unpredictable. With a final surge, the commander retreated, the fleet dispersing into the distance, leaving the city battered but intact. Exhausted but victorious, Kale stood amidst the ruins, surveying the damage. Liara ran to him, relief flooding her expression. You saved us all," she said, voice trembling. Kale shook his head slightly. "We saved ourselves. I only gave guidance and protection. It was your courage, your people's determination, and your choices that made this victory possible." Liara looked up at him, her eyes filled with admiration and love. "And still, you are incredible. I see now what I should have known from the start. You are extraordinary, Kale. But not because you are a weapon, because you are human, because you choose to protect, to care, and to fight for what is right." Kale allowed himself a deeper smile, feeling something he had never felt before, a sense of belonging, of trust, of connection. The battle had revealed his true nature to the princess, but in doing so, it also revealed something else, to himself. His humanity, his choices, and his courage defined him more than any design ever could. As the twin moons rose over the floating cities once more, the glow of Xifora's forests reflected on broken platforms and repaired towers. The people had survived, inspired by human ingenuity and bravery. And Kale, the weapon-turned protector, stood beside Liara, knowing that the challenges ahead would test them further, but confident that together they could face anything. The first wave of battle was over, but the war for Zyphora's survival had only just begun. And in that struggle, it was not alien technology or brute strength that would decide the outcome. It was human courage, ingenuity, and the choice to fight for what is right. The sky over Zyphora was a war-torn canvas of glowing streaks and flickering lights. The enemy fleet had regrouped, larger and more dangerous than before, and this time their target was the heart of the floating cities, the palace where Princess Liara and the council resided. The air was thick with tension, and even the normally serene forest seemed to tremble under the hum of approaching war machines. Citizens ran for shelter, but their fear was tempered by hope, the hope carried by one human warrior who had already proven he could turn the tide. Cale Rivers stood at the edge of the palace platform, eyes scanning the horizon. His calm exterior masked the storm inside him. The first battle had been a warning. This one would be the true test. He had studied the enemy patterns, their energy signatures, and their weaknesses. Every move, every strike would be crucial. He was no ordinary human. He was a weapon. But for the first time, he fought not because he was designed to, but because he chose to protect life. Liara approached him, her silver-blue hair shimmering under the faint glow of the city. She had grown through the previous days, no longer merely a princess, but a leader who inspired courage. "Cale," she said softly, her hand brushing against his, "we can do this together." Cale glanced at her, seeing both determination and worry. "Together," he confirmed. The word was simple, but it carried a weight of truth. He had fought countless battles, but none had required the kind of connection he now felt with someone he loved. Protecting her was no longer duty, it was choice. The first wave of enemy ships descended quickly, faster than before. They were equipped with heavy energy cannons, capable of ripping through platforms and forests alike. Cale leapt into action, moving across the city with speed no eye could follow. He dismantled drones, redirected energy flows, and coordinated defenses as if he were a living command center. His movements were a blur, precise, efficient, and terrifyingly effective. Liara, though not trained like Cale, took charge of guiding civilians and organizing defenses. She communicated with engineers and pilots, issuing orders calmly even as alarms screamed around her. Her people looked to her, seeing in her courage a reason to stand strong. Cale watched her for a moment, noting how quickly she adapted. Her bravery reminded him of why humans could survive against impossible odds. It was not technology but heart that made them strong. The alien commander appeared in the sky, a massive ship glowing with dark energy. Its weapons charged, ready to fire, and the city's defenses braced for impact. Cale leapt onto the ship's approach path, intercepting missiles and energy beams with inhuman reflexes. Civilians and soldiers alike could only watch in awe as he moved faster than thought, disabling weapons, dismantling drones, and keeping the palace safe. Liara watched, heart racing. She had always known Cale was extraordinary, but now she understood fully. He was not merely a warrior. He was a force shaped by human ingenuity, speed, and strength beyond imagination. And yet, what made him remarkable was not just his power, but his choices. Every strike, every leap, every action was guided by care and purpose. He fought for life, not destruction. The alien commander unleashed a massive energy beam aimed directly at the palace. Cale reacted instantly, using his enhanced strength to launch debris into the beam's path, creating a diversion while simultaneously dismantling its source. The beam shattered harmlessly against the floating fragments, and Cale landed gracefully atop a platform, dust and energy swirling around him. Liara ran to his side, relief flooding her expression. You stopped it," she exclaimed, awe and fear in her voice. Cale shook his head slightly. "I only gave the opening. It is your people, your courage, and your quick thinking that made this possible." Liara's eyes softened. "And you are extraordinary, but not just because of your strength, because of who you choose to be." Cale allowed a rare smile to cross his face. "Perhaps, but the fight is not over." The enemy fleet, though diminished, was far from defeated. Reinforcements poured in, larger and faster than before. The city's defenses were strained, and even Cale knew that brute force alone would not win this battle. He needed strategy, adaptability, and the unexpected. He turned to Liara. "I need you to trust me completely. Your people must act boldly, and I will act where I am needed most. We cannot hold the line by fear. We must fight with ingenuity. Liara nodded, understanding the weight of his words. Then we will do it together. Kale sprang into action, moving with lightning speed across platforms and energy conduits. He intercepted enemy drones, dismantling them before they could strike. He used the city's energy flows to his advantage, redirecting power into traps that disabled ships in midair. His mind worked faster than any human could comprehend, analyzing threats and opportunities simultaneously. But it was not just his abilities that won the day, it was the human ingenuity around him. Engineers adapted on the fly, using remnants of the destroyed drones to create improvised weapons. Pilots coordinated aerial maneuvers based on Kale's guidance, striking the enemy where they were weakest. Civilians, inspired by the bravery of Kale and Liara, took calculated risks to support defenses. It was a battle fought not by a single hero, but by a united human spirit amplified through Kale's extraordinary abilities. The alien commander, realizing that brute force could not break the city, unleashed a final desperate attack, a massive energy cannon that threatened to destroy an entire floating district. Kale leapt into the path, analyzing the weapon's energy signature instantly. He calculated the exact angle, force, and timing required to turn the attack against its own ship. With a single precise strike, he redirected the energy, causing the alien cannon to overload and explode, taking down the enemy commander's flagship in a spectacular burst of light and fire. The remaining alien ships, leaderless and disoriented, retreated into the distant atmosphere, leaving Zyphora battered but intact. The city trembled with relief and triumph. Citizens cheered, many rushing to embrace Kale, though he remained composed, scanning for any hidden threats. Liara ran to his side, her eyes shining with pride and gratitude. "You saved us all," she whispered, her voice trembling. Kale shook his head. "No one is saved by a single person. It is courage, ingenuity, and choice that protects life. You and your people made the difference." Liara reached for his hand, holding it firmly. "And yet, without you, we could not have done this. Your strength, your guidance, your heart. That is what makes you extraordinary." Kale allowed himself a deeper smile, feeling something he had never felt before, a sense of belonging. His humanity, long suppressed by design, was revealed not through the weapon he was engineered to be, but through his choices and the bonds he had formed. He realized fully that being human was more than flesh and thought. It was courage, love, and the willingness to fight for what was right. The city began to repair itself as engineers worked to restore the damaged energy conduits and platforms. Liara moved among her people, helping where she could, but her attention constantly returned to Kale. She watched as he coordinated defenses, comforted survivors, and ensured no threat remained. She saw not a weapon, but a man who had chosen to protect life in the face of impossible odds. That night, as the twin moons rose over Zyphora, Liara and Kale stood on the terrace, watching the glowing forests below. The city's lights reflected on broken platforms and repaired towers, a testament to human ingenuity and determination. Liara reached for Kale's hand, and he allowed it, feeling warmth spread through him, a warmth that no weaponry or engineering could create. "You were designed to destroy," Liara said softly, "but you chose to protect. That is what makes you human." Kale nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Yes, a weapon can act, but only a human can choose, and choice defines us." Liara smiled. "Then you are more than a weapon. You are extraordinary in every way that matters." The next days were filled with rebuilding and celebration. The city's citizens honored the bravery and ingenuity of everyone who had fought, human and Zyphoran alike. Engineers documented every strategy, every adaptation, and every brave act, knowing that future generations would learn from this moment. Kale, though lauded for his abilities, remained humble, his focus always on the safety of those around him. Liara and Kale spent quiet moments together, sharing stories of their worlds and dreams for the future. The bond between them, forged in danger and strengthened by trust, grew deeper with every conversation. They laughed, trained, and explored the city, finding moments of peace amidst the recovery. One evening, as the sun set over the horizon, Liara turned to Kale. "Do you ever wonder, if your creators had not made you a weapon, would you have found this life anyway?" Kale considered her words, looking at the glowing forests and the floating city that had been his battlefield and now his home. "Perhaps not," he said finally. But it does not matter. What matters is what I choose now, and what I choose is to protect, to care, and to live. Liara reached for him, holding his hand gently. And I choose to stand with you, not because you are a weapon, but because you are who you are, a human with courage, heart, and love. Kale felt something stir deep within him, a realization that his purpose was no longer defined by design, but by choice. He had been created to fight and destroy, yet he had discovered something greater, the human spirit, the power of choice, and the ability to love. As the night deepened and the city's lights reflected across the glowing forests, Kale and Liara stood together, watching the stars. The threat had passed, the city was safe, and the human spirit had triumphed over alien technology and oppression. They knew challenges would come again, but for now they had victory, love, and a bond that could withstand anything. Kale smiled at Liara, his expression soft and rare. This is our world now, and we will protect it together. Liara smiled back, her hand still in his. Together, she agreed. And so, in a world of floating cities and glowing forests, where alien fleets had once threatened to destroy everything, humanity had prevailed, not because of weapons or technology alone, but because of courage, ingenuity, and the unyielding human heart. Kale, the weapon who became protector, had chosen life over design, love over duty, and trust over fear. And in that choice, the fate of Zyphora and the bond between human and princess was forever secured. The twin moons shone down, illuminating the floating cities in soft light. Peace had returned, fragile but real, and in that peace, Kale and Liara found not only safety, but hope. For even in a universe filled with danger, human spirit and choice could triumph over any obstacle. The story of Zyphora would be told for generations, not as a tale of destruction, but as a testament to the extraordinary power of courage, humanity, and love. And at its heart, a human warrior and a princess had found in each other something that no weapon, no alien fleet, and no force of nature could ever take away. Trust, connection, and the strength to choose the right path, no matter the cost.